Alright, here's my 70 Challenger RT again. Going to work backwards today of how to put a 8 3/4 set of gears back in the car. Taking them out, of course, would be the opposite of what I'm going to do. But one of the things I like about the Mopar 8 3/4, it's relatively easy because they can be assembled or disassembled outside of the car and then put in as a single unit into it. Now I've gone ahead and taken the axles and tires and everything off, and the drive shaft, so this is kind of where I'm starting at this point. Right here is my new set of gears. I shouldn't say new, but it's my old case. It's a 489 case, and you know, you can debate that all you would like on whether you're 489 or I think it's a 742 case, whatever you'd like on it. This does have a sure grip rear end. It took me a second to remember what the heck Chrysler calls it, but it's a posi track unit. Of course, I went posi in this. I switched out from 456 to 355s in here to make it drivable, but that's pretty much it. So it's all assembled as one unit, and I'll show you essentially how we put that bad boy into the car. One of the first things I really like doing is making sure that I get all the debris off of here. On the gasket, I do use a regular gasket on here. I do use silicone sealer, but obviously I want to get all the crud off of here before I go and install it, because it's a lot easier to deal with it now than to try and drop the thing back out again. To make sure it's clean, you got a good clean bonding surface so you don't end up with leaks in your rear axle, which sucks. So anyway, I'm going to get this all cleaned off, and then you also want to do the mating surface on the 8 3/4 unit itself to make sure that all the old gasket material's off. Then I put on a silicone seal on here, and then I stick the gasket on. I put silicone seal on the rear axle underneath the car, and then I jack it up into place. Also, to make sure your surface is clean, I use some alcohol on it just to make sure that, you know, my silicone sealer is going to seal real well. So I want to be sure and, you know, get that cleaned up. As you can see, still a little bit of oil and stuff on there, so you want to clean this and the mating surface on the rear axle also. So make sure you get all that off there before you silicone your new gasket in place. And of course, a shop safety tip is whenever you're done with these rags and they've got flammable stuff on them, always have a metal trash can in your shop so you can throw that stuff in. Did have a neighbor at one point in time have some rags and stuff spontaneously combust. He lost his shop. He lost a bunch of vehicles in there, old hot rods, Corvettes, and other toys. So make sure you take care of your rags appropriately. And or like that mess right there, my kitty litter soaking up some of the grease that spilled out when I removed the axle, or the third member. Now the fun part of crawling underneath the car. You can see the bolts and stuff here. Typically what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to take the gasket and install it on here first, just because it makes more sense to have it stuck to the bolts so it's centered in the correct orientation. Make sure that you check your grease in there if there's any left in there, which there will be. If it's old, get it out. If it's not too bad, I'd still kind of wipe it out and make sure there's not any debris if anything came apart previously at any point in time, so make sure that's cleaned up. Okay, here I'm going to show you a little something. This is why you want to, double check. Now this has been sitting here for a few days while I've had it out, but I mean, as you can certainly see that? It's clear on one part and nasty on another. That tells me I probably had something going on in there at some point in time. So again, this was all pulled out of the car at one point, but those 456s, I was told, did have a little bit of an issue on the way it was set up. So again, I'm going to go ahead and clean the rest of that grease out of there and all that stuff that may cause an issue. Alright, now this is an interesting bit. On there, reaching up, cleaning out on the inside, this was a piece that was still from the original manufacturing when they punched the hole through the rear axle and put the studs on. That was hanging in there. I found some little shards of other pieces of metal in the bottom of the case, so I'm wondering if one of these came loose and ended up going through the gears a few times. So anyhow, I would double check, make sure on the back of those studs that none of these little shards are still hanging off there from the original manufacturing. Make sure they're cleaned up and off, so none of these fall up and get into your brand new gear set. So get those cleaned up. So that could cause some issues, noise, and tear up your gears pretty darn quick if one of those gets in there and falls apart. But just a final little shaving that got left in there. One of the other things I'm going to do is once I get inside here, and I'm looking behind so I can't see the screen, but I'm going to put a paper towel in the axle housing on both sides there just to plug it up, and I'm going to take an air compressor and blow out any final debris that might be in there, and I don't want that going up into the axle shaft area, the housing area, so it can just fall back down into the gear case later. Now another suggestion is before we start getting ready to put that thing in is to clean up all that mess as best as possible, so in case it comes off the jack or something, you don't want it to be cleaning up the gear set again because it's full of kitty litter. So get all that cleaned up, brushed up, have a nice clean floor to start so you're not putting anything nasty in when you assemble. Alright, getting closer. I always put a towel underneath the jack pad. It just kind of helps stabilize a little bit when you're trying to push it in there rather than just right on the metal pad. It, kind of sinks in that way. Gives a little bit more stability when you're trying to roll it underneath the car again. Okay, one final check here again. Make sure you kind of got it cleaned up. Now you see the little black specks. That's from me when I painted it with Chassis Saver to get it all cleaned out. So there's a little bit of paint in there, but just make sure you're all cleaned up, ready to go. Make sure you clean up all the old gasket material again, which this is some paint left over from when I actually painted it, but I'd try to scrape as much of that off as possible too, so you get a good solid surface to go ahead and adhere to. But okay, getting closer. I'm at the point where I got some nuts on there loosely. It actually pushes into place relatively easy as long as you get it pretty well balanced up. And at that point, like I say, what I'm going to do at this point right now is just take the thing and what that orange looking stuff is on there. I think it's just the lighting down here, but reflection from my jack stands, I'm sure. So anyhow, yeah, at this point here I'm just going to go ahead and get it all tightened up and get the jack up from underneath it. Like I say, you can put typically a couple on here, and I'd do on each side and at the top, and then get your jack out of the way, and it should stay up there, and it is. And then we'll finish tightening it up. We'll go ahead and put the U-joint clamps on, and then I'll show you how to slide axles in and tighten that up. Again, reverse procedure to get the axle or the housing back out. It's actually quite simple to change these. It's one of these things I like about my Mopars. Okay, a couple more things here. I see all the goo that's spooged out here. I typically don't mess with that at this point. I wait till it dries, because if you try and wipe it up, all you can do is smear it all over the place. As for the nuts on here, torque to whatever the specifications are for your vehicle. And you should be able to do that if you have a manual or check it online. But make sure you're torqued correctly. Make sure you get these bad boys, the clamps on here. I think I got that in the shot. Onto your unit there, and make sure those are torqued and on tight also. And here's your fill plug. When you're filling it up, it'll fill it up till it starts oozing out. If you're using a sure gripper end, there's additional additive you want to put in there to help reduce noise and wear on your differential unit. So make sure you use that when you're using a sure grip or Positrack. Now for one of the final steps, it's pretty easy. So typically if you have different rear ends that you want to use, your weekend race guy or time-to-time race guy at drive to car shows, I mean, this whole ordeal really you can probably get done in about an hour's time. Here's the drive shaft or the axle shaft in here. Once it's all kind of put back together, you just kind of slide it on in. You don't have to mess with your brakes on this or anything. Wiggle around till you match up the splines on the inside the differential unit back in there, and bolt her in place. There's a flat spot here that goes right underneath that particular arm, and it's also shaped that way on the bottom, even with the gasket. Slide her on there, put a new gasket on if you need, torque those to your specs, put your drum on, your wheel back on, and you're good to go. again, exactly opposite way to take it apart. So if you're taking one of these out, you start at this end, you pull your tire off, you pull your drum off, they slide right off. Take off these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nuts in there. In your axle shaft, a little wiggle, a little tug, she'll slide right out. You do that on both sides. And then all you do is undo your bolts, your nuts on the front of the third member there. Make sure you have a jack underneath it. I typically use a couple in there, leave a couple in there. Wedge it apart from the housing itself. Let all the oil drain out when you're changing.